As with any hobby, one of the best parts of model rareting is sharing your experiences with others. Socialization is important, especially with our special interests. Just look at what this channel is for, after all. While we do have a Discord server with quite the active chat room dedicated to just model trains, not everyone knows of it and not everyone wants to use Discord. That's all fine and dandy, because today, you don't need to be on the Discord. We're going to check out 15 community members' modeling endeavors. Let's dive in, shall we? Starting us off today is Night Monkey 1953. My dad and I have been collecting and building a 4x8 foot Pennsylvania Railroad N-scale layout for the past 3 years now. We've acquired a large fleet of locomotives, most of them steam. Most recently, we've been working on the interior of the tunnel and the mountain. We also plan to build a town in the top right corner of the layout, and build a roundhouse that's currently a work in progress and you can kind of see the footprint of in these photos. And the scale and its gloriously large trains. I've always loved the scope and scale that N provides. I mean, just look at that yard. Just look at that passenger train. Speaking of which, that's one heck of a collection. Do I see multiple Pennsylvania T1s in there? And just for some clarification, when you say the town is in the top right corner, I assume you mean the one with all the town buildings, right? I just want to make sure. It's kind of hard to see which corner you mean based on these photos, and maybe it's going randomly on the mountain? I doubt it, but it's good to check. Up next is Dusky Pines. My submission for today features my two 0-30 locomotives, my Porter Lumineer, and my 060 Huron, both of which are named after two of my favorite indie bands. These two are for my fictional line, the Echo Ledge Railroad, a small narrow-gauge logging line within the San Juan Mountains of Colorado. Nearly 2 years ago, I found Lumineer for a pretty cheap price at a local train shop, so I bought her, despite only having HO back then. Over time, I've done quite a lot to her, mainly painting as well as giving her some extra details like a toolbox, chain, and even a little pile of firewood in her cab. Huron is the most recent addition to my fleet, and he's become an instant favorite of mine. I haven't done much customization to him, it's just some labeling, a new number plate, and antlers. Lore-wise, I imagine Huron is a very supernatural engine, mainly as a nod to the spookier themes found within Lord Huron's music. You know, antlers are kind of underrated. Sure, they're not everyone's style, but they really do add a kind of character to the engine, you know? Maybe something having to do with the antlers in particular could have something to do with the supernatural that you mentioned surrounding the engine. It's also kind of funny to see the 060 next to a Porter as sister engines in a fleet. Isn't that thing's tender almost as long as the Porter? Someone, somewhere, is compensating. Up next is Lily Blahage Princess. Here is my 009 narrow gauge railway. It represents an unnamed preserved narrow gauge line detached from the real world. My most current project on the railroad is the red Duncan using a 3D printed body and a Percy N-gauge chassis from Bachmann. Lining is done with waterslide transfers from Fox Transfers, and the body is from Miniature Modeler's Hub. It still needs a clear coat and some touching up with the paint. It's the first model I made myself that I'm actually happy with. It looks much better than my other projects. My favorite engine is definitely the Double Fairley. Runs perfectly, looks awesome. It was hard to find one for an acceptable price, but I recently snagged this one. Something all of my locos have in common is they're all driven by anime girls. Why? Why not? It's my railway. Generally, I don't follow any specific theme for my trains, I just get what I like. Most of it is DCC. At this point, the layout is a bit over a year old, and I'm thinking about redoing it. At least, about redoing the mountain, since I'm not that happy with it. Honestly, I think the mountain looks pretty good, but I could see some parts of its shape that you might want to touch up. But hey, redoing a major part of a layout can be good fun and a good way to learn more scenery building techniques. Though building a whole new layout can give you a better point to compare on how you've improved, and you get more space to show off your trains. And considering how much of a collection you have, maybe that's the best option. And, considering how this layout has turned out, it'll be fun to see what you can do next time. Only one way to find out, Up next is Coop the Butterman. Coop, co-op, whatever. Hello everyone! Some might recognize me as that dude who posts his 40k army on Discord. Anyways, I finally got something terrain-related to share. This is my model railroad, the Connecticut Eastern District Railroad. My father and I have been working hard on it for the last 4 months. I've been slowly acquiring many different buildings for it, such as a depot I named Grovemont and a brick station with an extended platform that I named Sunnyvale. The board is a unique 3.5 by 8 feet. I plan to add many more buildings and scenery in the future, such as an Iron Giant figure and a custom station based off of the station on the Essex Valley Railroad. My main engine in my fleet can be seen in one of the photos, a Broadway Limited J1E Hudson. I know that if I don't start with this, the comments are going to be ablaze somewhat, so I'm sorry for your loss with using EasyTrack. Lots of people complain about it, myself included. To anyone looking to build your own railroad, I would suggest avoiding it if possible, but hey, use what you got, right? So long as it works, all's well, and it looks like you've got a good plan made out of EasyTrack here. The biggest suggestion that I can give for your layout is to try and move the track away from the edge. Trust me, I've seen too many engines fall to the floor and hit the concrete. I know the horrors. You don't want the J1E to hit the floor. Speaking of which, that Hudson would be the star of most anyone's fleet. It's a pretty locomotive, an iconic and popular historical prototype, and hopefully a good runner for you. Up next, we have an uncredited submission. I find the lack of continental Europe submissions a little odd, so I decided to fill in the gap. Today I present to you with an HOF 6mm gauge model of a WLS 50 horsepower narrow gauge diesel locomotive. I bought it as a 3D printed kit, knowing that it had some kind of engine bay detail, but I was a little bit disappointed by how simple it wound up being. As I have worked with those locos before, I knew where everything should be, so I decided to do my own modeling for the engine bay. I think it turned out pretty well. I based the paint job on a specific one that I have a certain connection to. I'm also working on a display layout. It's in its early stages and based on a typical workshop/depot from my area. I have to mention, the light in the windows is more yellow in the photos than it is in reality. I have some more work in progress stuff, but all of it is in very early stages and I'd rather do some more work before sharing them, so expect more submissions from me in the future. That level of detail on an HO scale model is insane. It's a shame that some of it is hidden under the hood, but good that that side panel is open, giving more viewing angles to some of it, right? Though even the outside shell is nicely weathered. Well done! Can't wait to see how the workshop will turn out once you have a full display ready. Though, something is nagging me. Isn't HOF 6.5mm? I know it's a small difference, but I thought it was Z-gauge track. Some clarification would be nice. Up next is Countless Adeline. This little gremlin is AH&G number 1 Caroline. She's an 044T Forney that I kitboshed over the span of 6 months. She's made out of parts from several different locomotives and lettered for my fictional railroad, the Adelaide, Harbor, and Greenwich. Caroline is the railroad's darling, which is why she has glossy paint. She would run mixed trains and passenger services between Adelaide and Greenwich, Minnesota, both of which being fictional towns, and for a while she ran the commuter service down to Duluth before it was electrified. And I love how she's come along. I built her only because standard gauge HO Fornies are brass and cost an arm and a leg. So, I built my own. She runs like a charm and, funnily enough, has one of the slowest running speeds of any locomotives that I own. Man, what a goober. What kind of engines is she made out of? It looks like an 040 tank engine for the mechanism, but I can't quite figure out the rest, and I might need to take some notes for the future. I love how you did all the piping in that early progress photo. I feel like it really adds a lot of character to the final product. Next, we have Sam SP Fan. This time around, I wanted to show my custom-painted Baltimore and Ohio 080. I got this brass engine a while ago, and I couldn't stand it being unpainted, and finally got myself to paint it up. The engine and tender are the same size as my custom Niagara. I didn't have a plan of how I wanted to paint it, so I just kinda did a normal-looking paint scheme, and I think it turned out really nice. People tell me I literally shrunk a locomotive. Sometimes the classic paint jobs are the classics for a reason, eh? A simple white stripe does so much to frame the locomotive with so little actual effort. Maybe it could use a little weathering, though. Kind of funny seeing the side-by-side comparison with that Niagara. I know it's just an 080, but it feels like a big engine until you put it next to that thing. It's kinda comical, not gonna lie. Next up is Chark. I recently managed to find another model of one of my all-time favorite locomotives for pretty cheap on Facebook Marketplace. The locomotive in question is the Victorian Railways NA class, and the specific model is the green variation. I originally bought her with plans to 3D print parts and restore her, but a friend pointed out how her current condition appeared similar to a specific photo of one of the worst condition NA locomotives, 3A. I'm currently debating whether I should work to restore the engine into a form more comparable to 6A, or paint her up like in the photo of 3A. I've never attempted any DIY work on locomotives, but there's no better time to try. That there is, and I'm sure no matter what path you'll take, you'll be able to learn something along the way. Personally, I'm a bit of a sucker for these engines since they're outside-framed tank locomotives, which is a bit of an uncommon combination, so I'd argue to restore her to functional condition. It'd pair well with the other one you already have. On the other hand, good luck figuring out how to replace those rods. I don't know if they sell replacement parts for those, and I don't know how easy it would be to 3D print new ones, so maybe set dressing wouldn't hurt. Indecision. It's your call in the end. Do what's best for you. Up next is Nico Lisa. This is my collection of late 1800s rolling stock. As railroad history in my area is quickly fleeting, I like to focus on it and some more obscure and forgotten parts of it. For example, most people don't know who owned the track before the big railroads took over. So I like to include a CCC and STL Big 4 loco in my runnings, as they were a major railroad in this area. Or the Reuben Wells, the locomotive that conquered the Madison Incline, and the many variations of paint schemes found on the billboard boxcars and reefers of the time. While my locos are all brass with the exception of the Reuben, the cars are all either scratch-built, such as the Radium Tanker, or simple kits that I've weathered and decaled. All the parts that I made myself can be found on Thingiverse. Honestly, I feel like this is an underrated area of the hobby. I say that because the only time prior to this one that I've actually seen stuff from before 1900 seriously modeled is all Civil War era dioramas or before. It feels like most models between the Civil War and the 1900 are kind of excluded and it's all or nothing before or after that point, so it's nice to see an honest attempt at a bit of an in-between. Next up is Abomination. This is my prop replica of Season 4 Rusty. While the website for the Audrey Extravaganza 5 was dying, I made the stupid decision to make a prop replica for the event. I designed them myself in Blender, and they're powered by circuit cubes so I could control them directly from my phone. After sanding them to hell and back, I painted him in orange and gave him his decals, and then I was about done, really. But as something special for the event, I also added something a little bit snazzy. A headboard and some bunting. Eventually, the big day arrived, and I was able to snap some pictures of him next to Henry, Thomas, and his inspiration, Midlanders. He is currently my pride and joy, and I hope someday to be able to run him on a proper layout. But until that day, he'll have to watch and envy at my 00 gauge logos. Honestly, I laughed pretty hard when I first saw those circuit cubes. But in hindsight, that's actually a pretty clever, and cheap, way to get a dead rail system into a train of a larger scale. There's no better motivator than a deadline for an event. I'd hardly call it a stupid decision, though, as it's a lot of fun to be part of the party. And I mean, who else gets to say they pulled a stunt like this? I'm sure the answer is more than one person, yeah, but I'm also certain it's not a double-digit answer. Nice job. Hope you had fun at the extravaganza. Next is Maybe Crazy. Finally, after missing 2 showcases, I can throw my stuff up here. First, the semi-infamous Bluebird. She's the first quote-unquote proper steam locomotive that I 3D printed, and honestly, it shows. For those who don't know, she was initially created as a body shell for a Bachmann 040 tank engine. This, however, didn't work, so I ended up making my own chassis for her. Bluebird herself is entirely PETG, and the tender houses an LGB motor. She's a decent runner, when her gears aren't stripped, and she gets a decent amount of track time, though she is due for a remodel at some point. Next is the Brian Brewbottom of Forney. She's my latest locomotive project, while I procrastinate on a tender. Unlike Bluebird, I'm actually proud of her enough that I've put her on printables. I modeled her using plenty of spare parts, mostly recycled from my earlier porter. Once again, I printed it all out in PETG, and miraculously, it worked. Currently, she's unpowered, but I've got some plans for that. Well, this is going straight into my long list of reasons I need to do some 3D printing of my own. And then again, now that I think of it, so is that Rusty model from earlier. How is it that so many of you all are good at 3D modeling? How dare you be inspiring in a video intended to inspire others? Up next is T-Crash Productions. I present to you the Echo Valley Railroad and Coal Company number 13. In lore, 13 is an ex-Southern Railway F-14 class 460 that's been heavily modified and rebuilt into what it looks like today. The engine has seen how she looked during the Great Depression and onward into preservation. 13's model is a Pacific Fast Mail Louisiana and Arkansas 460 that's been modified with a new headlight, etched number plate, butterfly firebox doors with a Fireblax flicker LED in there, the stack cab sourced from a Hornby GWR engine, and the tender of a DNRGW T29 460. The engine is equipped with Blue Nami sound and a Northwest Shortline motor and gearbox for better performance, as well as being heavily weathered to represent a locomotive operating on a shoestring budget and sorely needing maintenance. Other notable details I'd like to highlight are the Railroad's Herald logo for the tender, designed by my friend Cody's Railway on Twitter, and the custom number and Herald decals being produced by STS Scale Model Decals. Overall, Old Number 13, or Moonrunner as the crews affectionately call her, is my favorite brass model and certainly a favorite when running in my local club layout. I gotta say, it's hilarious that we've had 2 Echo Valley Railroads in one form or another between this showcase and the last one. It's not the same loco, but I've got a hunch I know where that railroad name came from. If I had a nickel. Moonrunner is such a poetic name. Though, considering that one provided clip of her pulling an express passenger service, yeah, I think for publicity services, you could say that she could make it to the moon and back in under a day. That would make for one heck of a catchy tagline. Next up is Jacob's 0-30 scale model trains. I'm relatively new to the 0-30 side of model railroading, but I wanted to show off my locomotives, rolling stock, and a couple of kit buildings that I got off of eBay. They're all still works in progress. Locomotives 1, 2, 3, 4, and 10 are all pretty much where they're going to stay. Number 5 still needs to have the old railroad name painted over, and obviously we're missing a few that haven't been purchased yet, and a few cars and locos are out at a friend's for maintenance. My layout's not built as of yet, but I've got a little synopsis for the railroad's backstory. A railroad, a refugee, a legend that carries love forever. Founded in 1876 by lovers Elias Whitaker and Samuel Sam Lowe, the Appalachian and Great Lakes Railroad was more than a line of track. It was a sanctuary. From the foggy harbors of Maine to the iron cliffs of Minnesota, its steam locomotives carried not just freight and passengers, but secrets, stories, and lives the world tried to erase. The railroad never modernized and never abandoned steam and never stopped being a refuge. Along its route, cryptids watch from the tree line, whispers of folklore and guardianship woven into every mile. I need to look up how you pronounce this word, hold on. The Skavator in the pines, the Banshee of Burnt Ridge, the Wendigo haunting northern forests. Through centuries of change, Alias and Sam remain immortal, steadfast, and still in love. Their presence keeps the rails alive with magic, their devotion turning the A and GLR into a living legend where love endures, steam remembers, and sanctuary is forever. You know, I was going to cut that story for time, since this is a bit of a longer submission text-wise, but that's so poetic. Someone likes writing, I see. Welcome to the club in that regard, and remind me to write more than once a year, please. Stuff like this is so inspiring and fun. That one porter, specifically number 1, seems to be a bit of a unique kit bosh. Did you get it that way, or did you build it yourself, or maybe your friend helped you? I'd love to know a little more about it. It's a pretty fascinating little locomotive. A steam-era railroad with modern-era buildings like that hotel and alien, museum-themed store, restaurant, I don't know. Either way, that kind of setting would make for a pretty cool layout. Trust me, having been to the Durango in Silverton recently, it's quite a vibe. It'll be fun to see how such a unique theme turns out when you actually get around to building the layout. Up next is Lacking Awana. Here is my in-development HO-scale model of Bethlehem Steel's fictional Allentown plant. The structures were designed by Case Western on Thingiverse, and my friend and I 3D printed them all. The largest piece is the blast furnace, which it took 27 hours to print. The project was inspired by my first visit to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and the grandeur of the real steel mill, as well as my family history relating to the company. My plan is to complete these modules and repaint their respective locomotives before making more modules and trains of my own design and a few designs from my friend Nico Lisa on Thingiverse. Until then, it's painting, track laying, and scenery. Whoa, what a structure. I can see why its grandeur caught your attention. That thing would make for a centerpiece on any layout, no matter how big or small. Since it's a steel mill, I gotta ask, are you going to model slag cars? They're such fun and weird pieces of rolling stock, and hey, you've got a 3D printer, so I'd be a little bit surprised if the answer was no. Let's end on a bit of a high note. Here we have a quite large project update from a previous showcase, provided to us by Mr. Railroad Runner. What I've got to show today is Mid-Michigan Railroad number 24 in its now operational state. It was a lot of work to get here, so here's the basics. 24 was only partially assembled when we last left off on a showcase. The trucks were removed, additional detail was added to the wear plates, and then painted. I also painted the fuel tank at this juncture and began to put the body into primer. This is probably the point where I should mention I had a deadline. This engine was going to Train Mountain in Oregon in early June for their tri-annual meet. That was about a month out at this juncture. As such, the paint job was abandoned, and the primer was simply there to keep the metal from rusting. With help from a good friend, we then tackled the wiring on the engine. It's running an 8-horsepower motor on 24 volts. The engine is run from remote control, and I scavenged a set of horns from a different friend's Subaru rally car for the low price of, nothing. Once the wiring was complete, we had about a week to test it before going to Oregon. Thankfully, everything held up. The engine was test ran without its nose, which resulted in a quite strange look. However, it was running. Number 24 traveled the 2,300 miles to Oregon with a couple of friends, while I flew out to meet it. I wasn't sure what to expect when I got to the railroad, but the engine fared rather well on its track. Ultimately, 24 made it all the way out to Hope Circle at Train Mountain more than once, which is a total trip of 4.7 miles in each direction by rail. The engine behaved admirably and operated the whole trip. 24 was built in a batch of 9 engines, and one of its siblings was also at Train Mountain, also in gray. While it's not my work, it is an omen of things to come. The second engine is 48 volts and is heavier than 24, and much faster than 24. I'll be doing a conversion from 24 to 48 volts on Mid-Michigan 24 in the future. Overall, this project has been really fun. I've learned a lot of new skills, and 24 has been proving its usefulness back home for hauling dirt, gravel, trees, and various things around its home road. I can't begin to imagine bringing something this big across the country, and then bringing it back. No less the amount of work it takes to actually build something like this. I assume at least the trucks were standardized just based on how complex their shapes are, but everything else, that was all done by you and your friends, right? Maybe the cuts were all standardized, but that looks like welded steel plates that have all been cut to shape manually. I'm sure there's more to do than just paint and converting it to a 48-volt system, and I would wish you luck on that, but if you've made it this far on a project this large, I'm sure you can finish the job. 5 miles round trip on a railroad 2,300 miles away from a home? You'll do fine. That's all we've got for today's showcase. Thank you to all who submitted. Sorry we didn't have the time to get to everyone with the new way we're organizing this, but hey, one showcase done so quickly means we can move on to the next one in a more timely manner, right? Which means we're more likely to get photos fresh off the press. And hey, there'll be another chance to get in pretty soon, right? Thanks for watching. Cheers, folks.